Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are calling in from and viewing from. My name is Cindy Haight, and we have Sabrina Ippolito here. And today we're going to be talking about root cause analysis, specifically Unearthing the Why, a two-part journey into the art and science of root cause analysis. So this webinar is part one of a two-part series, and the next session we will be doing live on May 16th. So you can find the link in the link session at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to join us in a few weeks for part two. My name is Cindy Haight. I'm a regional sales manager here at SGS. I've been here just over 3 years, and it's a great place to work. I'm so happy that I joined my team here. I work with core ISO standards and supply chain audits, as you can see there, for a variety of industries. We'd be happy to do anything to help your companies. Please feel free to drop a question in the Q&A section if there's anything we can do. I would like to introduce you to Ms. Sabrina Ippolito. Sabrina is a lead auditor. She's classically trained biochemist. She has worked with many organizations to help them maintain compliance across several different industries and certifications and standards. She works with pharmaceutical, cosmetics, and general manufacturing organizations. She's overseen and directed several quality systems to reduce deficiencies and increase product flow across the US and Canada. And she's affiliated with the Professional Order of Chemists of Quebec, as well as the American Society for Quality. Just a little bit in brief about SGS. We are a global organization. We are the #1 global organization in the TIC industry. That's testing, inspection, and certification. Of course, we're here to talk about certification topics today. We are approaching our 150th year in business. We employ almost 100,000 people around the world in over 2,500 offices and labs. So we strive to be different and set ourselves apart from other companies in our industries. As I mentioned, throughout our global network, very extensive presence in 119 countries. So we really have a vast network to support many areas that you might benefit from your businesses. SGS, we hold ourselves to a very high quality of service. Just like when we come to audit your organization and your quality management system or your health and safety management system, we're there to assess your quality, and we hold ourselves to that same high level of quality. Our amazing auditor team brings vast industry experience to the table. So they've already gone through their careers, and they have the specific industry knowledge which qualifies them to come in and perform a value-added audit for your organization. SGS, we are very focused on being on the forefront of digital innovation. Just one of those aspects is our fantastic client portal, where if you're an SGS client, you have access to all of your documentation, your audit reports, your certificates, and everything in one convenient location. SGS is also committed to our corporate sustainability journey. We have a goal of reducing our carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2030. Sabrina and I work in the business assurance group here at SGS. Obviously, we offer assessment and auditing and certification services. We have competency training opportunities through SGS Academy. We also have services for supply chain assurance and risk management through second-party audits, and also our product called Seymour. We have sustainability services that can help you on your company's sustainability journey, and the services range So we have a specific group that focuses just on that. We offer consulting services through SGS Mainpoint, and we also have a full range of medical device regulatory compliance services. So here's our agenda for today. I want to remind you that you can post questions in the Q&A section at any time. We will try to get to a good Q&A section toward the end of the hour. And any questions that we don't have time to respond to live, we will be sure to follow up with you individually. So here we go. I'm going to introduce Ms. Sabrina to take over, and I hope everyone enjoys the session.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Hello, everyone, and a very warm and cozy welcome to you all. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join me today for part one of our webinar series on root cause analysis. I've spent upwards of 10 years working with organizations to implement and refine RCA methodologies, helping companies to uncover the whys behind their challenges and drive sustainable improvements. So our goal for this first session is to build a very strong foundational understanding of RCA. And like the agenda suggests, we'll be covering, and just to summarize the agenda very quickly, we're going to be covering the fundamental principles of RCA, some common RCA methodologies, some practical tools for identifying root causes, how to avoid common pitfalls, and hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll be equipped with the knowledge to start applying RCA in your own work, leading to more efficient and effective problem-solving techniques and lasting improvements. So now, before we dive in, I'm curious, as a good scientist is, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to problem solving? Feel free to share in the chat. It'll help us tailor the discussions to your specific needs. And hopefully, maybe I'll be able to actually implement some of the things that you're also mentioning in part two of this webinar series. So without further ado, let's start. So my first poll question for you all: what is your current level of familiarity with RCA, with root cause analysis?
I just want to peep in and thank everyone for participating in our polling questions. You can click right on your answer right on the screen, and we'll discuss the results here in just a few seconds.
There's no right or wrong answer to this one. It's just to help guide us in understanding better, I guess, what the needs are in industry as well. Okay, so we've got, I'm completely new to RCA. Yep, I remember being there. Some basic understanding, okay. I use RCA in some projects, good. I'm experienced with RCA, an expert. Okay, good. I'm happy to see that. 4, 5, 6. Nice. So about 70%, that's good. Good. So for those of you who are very new to RCA and have a very basic understanding of RCA, I can tell you you're definitely in the right course, or definitely in the right webinar. As for those of you who have used RCA in projects and have experience and are experienced in RCA, hey, there's always something new that we can learn, right? So let's get going. Very nice. Okay, so let's define what RCA is. So root cause analysis is a structured problem-solving methodology that is designed to identify the fundamental underlying causes of an issue, rather than just addressing its symptoms. It seeks to answer the why behind the problem and to prevent its recurrence. So like, for instance, if we have, like what we have in this pretty little picture over here, we have a broken light bulb. The symptoms is that you either have no light, you might have flickering light or a burning smell, right? The root cause is that that there's a filament failure or that a filament broke. So what we're wanting to do is we're really wanting to address and identify the root cause instead of just addressing the symptoms. Oh, it smells like there's a burning smell of some sort. Okay, let's go put it on air freshener. No, that's a Band-Aid fix. We're wanting to truly identify and figure out what is the root of the problem. This brings us into our next polling question. So which of the following best describes the primary goal of root cause analysis? I'll give you all a couple of minutes to answer, a couple of seconds maybe. So which of the following best describes the primary goal of RCA? Is it to quickly fix the immediate problem, to identifying the underlying causes of a problem, to blame individuals for mistakes, or to document all steps taken in a process? Yes, very good. Excellent. So identifying the underlying causes of a problem. Wonderful. Very well done. Good job. So as you know, the primary goal of RCA or root cause analysis is to analyze incidents, to identify what happened exactly, how did it happen, why did it happen, and to ensure that actions for preventing recurrence are being developed. That's the intention. The intention is to learn from what occurred. Let's fix the problem. Let's try to determine what are the potential issues or the potential root causes and to address them. So this is a typical schema that we would typically see when we're trying to address the RCA process. So RCA, root cause analysis, is a systematic approach involving these key steps. We want to define the problem. We want to gather data. We want to gather evidence that supports the issue. We want to identify possible causes. So we need to define the problem. We want to determine the root causes, develop solutions, and then implement actions and monitor. Why would we want to monitor? Because we want to ensure that the actions that we're implementing are addressing the issue, thereby further reducing the probability of that negative event from occurring again. So symptoms versus root cause. Symptoms are the visible effects of a problem. They are what we would typically observe. So if we consider these two examples that I have listed out here for you. So for instance, this is something, if anyone has ever used a laptop or an iPad, this is something that you might be familiar with, is that you might have your systems that crash on you. That's the symptom. That is what you are observing. Your root cause and the reason for that crashing computer could be, doesn't mean it is, but it could be related to an outdated server or hardware. In our second example, something also that we can all, that we're probably all familiar with, are late project deliveries. That's your symptom. Your root cause, which is the underlying factor that actually creates the problem, could be, as an example, a lack of clear project scope and the lack of communication. So this is what you would be addressing instead of just say, hey, well, we've got late projects or you're not meeting the delivery timeline. We want to identify why is it that we're not meeting it. So benefits of using root cause analysis. Identification of permanent solutions. I mean, we try to implement root cause analysis because we do want to identify permanent solutions. Solutions so that these negative situations do not keep reproducing themselves. We want to prevent recurring failures. Introduce a logical problem-solving process application to issues and nonconformities of all sizes. We want to implement RCA. So an implementation of RCA is going to help us, or will assist us in identifying barriers and the causes of problems so that potential permanent solutions can be found. Developing a more logical approach to problem solving using data that already exists in most operations. Identifying current and future needs of organizational improvement. We want to establish repeatable, step-by-step processes in which one process can confirm the results of another. So essentially, the benefits of your RCA, you are going to prevent recurring problems. You will hopefully increase operational efficiencies. You're going to reduce costs associated with repeated fixes and improve decision making. You want to enhance product and service quality as well. So some general principles of RCA. So we want to be efficient and effective. We want to perform these techniques more systematically. There may be more than one root cause, right? So whenever we're looking at conducting a root cause analysis, most organizations, most people that I have spoken with, especially when I'm conducting with audits, they're fixated with, well, there can only be one. No, that's not true. There may be more than one potential root cause. And as an auditor, I can confirm with you that when we see organizations attempt at fixing a problem using structured techniques, it provides us, the auditor, well, we cannot give you consultation or advice, consulting advice or whatnot. We are positioned to give you good business practices. So we can look at what you've done and we can give some recommendations. We can say, well, have you thought of maybe this? Or, hey, this is something similar that I've seen happen at another organization that I've audited recently. This was their approach. So we're not giving you consultation advice, but what we are doing is that we're guiding your thinking as well. So we're not going to dock you. We couldn't give you a non-conform and say that you've attempted, we've seen you attempt at utilizing techniques, but you didn't get to the root cause, and therefore we're going to give you a non-conformance. That's not how it works. What we're analyzing, and also as an auditor, what we're reviewing is, what is that approach that you are utilizing internally? What is it that you're doing? Are you using something structured? Okay, in utilizing your structured approach, no, it may not have given you the outcome that you're looking for, but now do you have that trigger that, well, we're going to go back to the drawing board and try to identify what else could have potentially caused this negative failure or this situation. So just understand that you may have more than one potential root cause when you're trying to determine what occurred or what happened. What is the reason that that negative situation occurred? Root cause analysis help in preventing recurrence at the lowest cost in the simplest way. So before we start, throwing money at a problem, let's try addressing the situation with the lowest cost in a simpler way before we start throwing more money at a problem. We want to analyze. So your analysis should establish a sequence of events and timelines. Root causes identified depend on the way in which problems and events are defined as well. Root cause analysis can help to transform a reactive culture into a more proactive and forward-looking culture. It's not a one-size-fits-all methodology. So there are different tools, processes, and philosophies of accomplishing RCA. They do exist, and we're going to look at some of those. RCA was born out of, root cause analysis was born out of a need to analyze organizational activities and processes. For instance, incident analysis in occupational health and safety. We use RCA tools to help us determine what occurred. Quality control, efficiencies or a lack thereof in business processes, engineering and maintenance failure analysis. We use root cause analysis for this. There are various systems-based processes that we can utilize. Surface versus underlying issue. I mean, if a picture isn't worth 1,000 words, I don't know what is. So the surface level solutions often provide temporary fixes, but they don't prevent recurrence, right? We've got a leaking pipe. Cleaning up the spill is a surface level versus fixing the actual leaking pipe. That's the root. So we want to address our underlying issues so that we can sustain, or so that improvements are sustainable. Applying RCA, so applying root cause analysis. We can apply this to any major incidences that occur within an organization, to everyday incidences, minor near misses, and also to human error. But I want to give you a little note bene over here because I think it is worthwhile unpacking just a little bit. Keep in mind, 90% of human errors can actually be attributed to system errors and deficiencies. And this is usually where I bring in my best friend, Bob. And for any one of you who has attended any of the webinars that SGS has hosted alongside with myself, especially on root cause analysis, I would have mentioned Bob in some of these where, you know, dating back maybe about 10 years ago. So at the start of my career, I was working with a client of mine. And our poor friend Bob, who was nearing retirement or just in retirement, happened to slip on oil, fell down, and severely hurt his knee. So when speaking with my client had said, well, you know, to address the situation, I told Bob, you know, how to be careful for oil spills and to not walk on oil spills, but to walk around the oil spill. And I just like looked at that and I couldn't help but chuckle because I'm like, well, is that your root cause? Is that we need to be careful with the oil spill? She says, yeah. So to rectify this, you showed a man that is old enough to be your father how to walk in a workshop. She says, yes. And she was confirmed that she was bought off on the idea that this was her root cause. And I said, well, no, that's not the situation. That's not actually what happened, what occurred. I said, what you really want to try to determine is why, you know, the machine was leaking oil in the first place. And she's like, there was oil there because the machine was leaking oil. I said, yes, but why is the machine leaking oil? Machines are typically not supposed to be leaking oil. And with a shrug of the shoulders, she's like, Sabrina, I just don't know what to tell you. I said, well, someone clearly has an answer. I said, well, why don't we go speak to someone in maintenance? And we spoke to this one person in maintenance. And I had told him, I said, well, when was the last time that you did any sort of preventative maintenance on this machine? And he's like, well, Sabrina, I don't think I have. And I said, well, why didn't you? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, let me go check my documentation. And sure and behold, that machine was not documented on his equipment list to do preventative maintenance on. I said, well, why not? I said, that to me is a pretty big problem. Like, you have all of this equipment except for this one. He's like, well, it's brand new. I'm like, yeah, I get it, it's brand new, but even brand new pieces of equipment sometimes need some sort of a maintenance because you're using this equipment. So then as we were unpacking the situation further, we determined that the organization does not have a process in place for documenting new pieces of equipment as they're being purchased or as they're being brought in. And I said, well, that's where your problem is that there's no process in place for onboarding new pieces of equipment. The equipment was just installed and you just ran with it. Right? So when we're applying RCA, we have to be strategic with this. We have to think to ourselves, if your mind is automatically going to, it's a human error, I'm encouraging you to unpack that further, because as an auditor, we have to unpack that. We want to actually make sure that it is in fact a human error. And remember, it should only be about 10%, if any. So more on applying RCA, this could be utilized on maintenance problems as well as what I just showed you with our friend Bob, on any medical mistakes, on productivity issues, on manufacturing mistakes, environmental releases. As an example, putting waste into the environment, some mistakes happen, but why did that mistake happen? Any risk analysis, risk mapping, utilize RCA, utilize root cause analysis. it will benefit you. You will get a lot out of doing the work. These are some incident analysis tools that we can use. Again, if anyone has ever taken one of the webinars where I've spoken about RCA in the past, the diagram on the right should be one that you're all familiar with. There are so many tools that you can utilize when it comes to RCA. For those of you who are looking to either revamp your root cause analysis, your corrective action process, or are implementing systems for the first time, what I would highly recommend that you do is give the individual who's going to be doing the investigation the choice in terms of the tool that they're going to use. I'll give you an example. I'm going to tailor, or this webinar has been tailored really with the two techniques that I've seen most organizations use, and two techniques that I feel very comfortable using myself, which are the 5 whys and the Fishbone approach. I mean, I've used some of the other techniques as well, but I always go back to what I feel comfortable using. If I think of my brother, for instance, who's an engineer, and when he looks at equipment, in his brain, he's either putting the pieces of the equipment together or disassembling it in his brain and replacing them back together. So when it comes to him utilizing a tool, he is best comfortable utilizing FMEA, failure modes effects analysis. So it would be counterintuitive for us to prescribe our users the tool that they have to use. I would put it at large and say, these are all of the tools that can be used. And whichever one or whichever else that you might feel comfortable using. And in some cases, we can start off with using one approach, like what I've often seen is people start off with using the Fishbone approach. And then once they think that they figured out what the potential root causes might be, they'll then utilize the 5 whys analysis and further unpack and deep dive in those potential causes a little bit more. So let's get into the 5 whys. So the importance of why. The 5 whys is a question asking technique that's used to explore the cause and effect relationships underlying a particular problem. The primary goal of this technique is to determine the root cause of a defect or a problem. So asking why, in fact, 5 times is believed to lead to the conclusion. Hence why it's called the 5 whys technique. The number of times you ask why will depend on the depth of the problem. Sometimes 3 or 4 whys are sufficient to reach the root cause. Sometimes. This is with less complex issues. With a more complex problem, we can go up to 7 or 8 whys. So just keep in mind, too few whys, problem might not be analyzed enough in depth or detail. Too many whys could alternatively indicate over-analysis. So you need to, I encourage you to use a tool and to keep using that tool. So when a situation presents itself, you might be conflicted with, did I do too many whys? Did I maybe do not enough whys? You need to find a nice equilibrium. And by utilizing that tool, you will eventually get to that answer, but you need to use the tool. And I encourage you, use that tool. You can only get better from it. I remember starting off in quality when I was a baby quality person. Don't think that this came innate to me where I was able to right away figure out that, okay, 4 whys is sufficient for me to figure out what the situation is and to nip the problem in the bud right away. It took practice. And it took me fully understanding the company and understanding the situation and the problem and inviting different people into the discussion to be able to say that, hey, 4 whys I think is sufficient to answer this, or maybe I need to go a lot deeper and I need to get to 7, 8, or 9 whys. So why is it important to ask why multiple times during a root cause analysis? Is it to make the analysis longer? Is it to find the root cause, not just the symptoms, to confuse the team, or to assign blame to individuals? I'll give you a hint. It's definitely not D. Let's see what you're coming up with. Yes, exactly. 100% of you answered correctly. It's definitely to find the root cause. It's not just about addressing the symptoms. If any of you, especially for any new individuals that are new to root cause analysis, remember, you're not looking to address the symptom. It's not the immediate fix. Okay, root cause analysis, it's about addressing why that's occurring in the first place. So yes, your immediate fix is let's clean up any spills, let's clean up any issues, let's address the immediate problem, let's make something non-conforming into conforming, and then let's analyze why did it become non-conforming in the first place. And let's try to address what those potential issues are, and let's create the actions necessary so that we can address those problems. Good. So let's apply the 5 whys towards a late report. So what's the problem? The weekly report was submitted late. Okay, my first question, my first why. Well, why was the report late? An answer you might get is, well, the data was incomplete. Okay, good, fine, that's the starting point. Why was the data incomplete? The data collection process was inefficient. Okay, good, we're getting somewhere. Why was the process inefficient? The team lacked clear data entry guidelines. Good. Why were there no guidelines then? There was no standardized documentation practice or process. Okay, so why was there no documentation? Because the time constraints, and this is something that most organizations suffer from, are time constraints. So the time constraints and lack of prioritization. So your root cause is that there's a lack of standardized documentation and prioritization of documentation. So when you're trying to determine what are the actions or what are the next actions that you're going to put in place, you're going to focus on standardized documentation and making sure that that is prioritized so that people have a guideline, that they have a tool, a working tool, that they have direction so that issues like this do not occur again. And it has to be assigned to someone. And you ask that individual in which you are assigning, or the individuals in which you are assigning, when can you get this done by? And this is where your negotiation practice or process starts. What are you negotiating? The timelines. We need this done sooner rather than later. Yes, but these are all my other priorities in my pipeline. Okay, is there anything that could be moved around? If the answer is no, is there someone else that can do it? And it is important to assign an individual and not assign a job title, because there could be more than one person that holds that same job title. So who should perform the 5 whys? Employees who have done a specific job or project, as they have firsthand knowledge and experience to do so. So this technique is most useful when problems involve human factors or interactions, specifically in day-to-day business life. Naturally, with all techniques, there are benefits, there are limitations. So the 5 whys process, you want to be able to assemble a team. You want to write out the description of the problem, of the negative event that occurred. You want to ask why. You want to repeat those steps again and again. And finally, you want to have a consensus, an agreement, a resolution. There are benefits in conducting the 5 whys. It's simple. I mean, just think of any of 4 or 5 year olds that you might have within your families. They're constantly asking questions. I know my beautiful, sweet daughter, Michaela, often asks me why, especially when it comes to bedtime, but why do I need to go to bed? Because you have to go to bed. But why do I need to go to bed right now? Because mommy said so. And that's an ongoing process, but she has mastered the 5 whys technique. It's very, very simple to be utilized. It's effective. It is a comprehensive technique, very flexible, it's engaging, and it's super inexpensive. There are limitations to utilizing it though. Brainstorming can be time consuming. It can result, the results of the analysis may not necessarily be reproducible. They might not be consistent. Root causes may not be identified. It does happen. Assumption of a single cause. And like I said earlier, when we're looking at root cause analysis, it's not just one cause that can potentially cause the situation in occurring. It could be multiple causes. And sometimes we can give an incorrect answer to the why question, which is going to derail the process. But generally speaking, it's a great first attempt. This brings us into our second technique that we can utilize, the fishbone diagram. We've got the head. So the fish head is your effect, it's your problem, the problem that's occurring. And the body are the causes. The fishbone diagram, some of you might have heard it, some of you might know it as the cause and effect diagram. I've seen other people, other organizations call it the herringbone diagram. Some other organizations, I've heard them call it the Ishikawa diagram as well, but it all means the same thing. You've got the head of the fish, this is your problem. You've got your causes, you've got your equipment, you've got processes, people, materials, environment, and management. So this would require you to start looking at what could potentially cause these problematic areas in each one of these categories. So the objective of the fishbone diagram is really to determine, again, like the 5 whys, is to determine the root causes of a problem, focusing on specific issues without resorting to complaints and irrelevant discussion. So it really helps you to remain focused and at task. It helps us identifying areas where there is a lack of data as well. We'll often use the fishbone diagram. The applications of a fishbone diagram allows us to focus our attention on a specific issue or problem, to focus the team on the causes and not on the symptoms. Again, this is one of the pitfalls that we have seen time and time and time again, not just myself as an auditor, but even when discussing with my fellow auditors. What are people doing wrong when it comes to root cause analysis? They are often fixing the symptom. They're often fixing the immediate action, and they say that they have done the root cause. No, fixing the symptom or the immediate action is just addressing the situation right now. It requires you to do a more in-depth analysis. We want to graphically organize and display the various theories about what the root causes of a problem might be. Show the relationships of the various factors influencing a problem. Reveal important relationships among various variables and possible causes, and provide additional insights in process behaviors as well. Again, just like what we saw in the 5 whys, we've got benefits and limitations of fishbone as well. And it's important. It's because I'm not here to sell you one technique over another. It's important that you understand what the benefits and limitations are of your techniques so that you are better equipped to use the right technique so that you're more efficient and effective in carrying out your analysis. So some of the benefits in utilizing the Ishikawa diagram is that it does help determine root causes. It encourages group participation. And that is one thing that most of the standards, at least I can talk about the 9001, is really focusing on. It focuses on teamwork, on the leadership group. It's no longer the responsibility of the success of management systems is not weighed on the shoulders of one individual. So it encourages team building. It encourages for us to think of different perspectives. So therefore, it encourages group participation. It's one way of demonstrating that, hey, when we're looking at problem solving, we're not looking at, perspective coming one direction. We're looking at a multitude of perspectives to determine, maybe it's not just that one cause, but multiple causes could have led to this event to happening. It uses an orderly, easy to read format to diagram cause and effect relationships. It indicates possible causes of variations as well. Increases knowledge of the process by helping everyone to learn more about the factors at work and how they relate. Like, for instance, HR or maintenance. Because they're each subject matter experts in their own respective ways, in their own departments. But when you ask these people to be part of this proverbial table and engage in conversation and discussion, now each individual who's a subject matter expert in their own department gets to see the inner workings of the other departments as well. And this is also where process improvements could be weighed in on. We also have limitations, like I said. The simplicity of the fishbone diagram can be both its strength and its weakness. As a weakness, the simplicity may make it difficult to represent truly the interrelated nature of problems and causes in some very complex situations. So in some cases, you might need an extremely large space to put your fishbone so that you can add all of the factors or variables that can affect. Let's talk about validation for a little bit. So the intention of validation, so the objective of the investigation, so eliminating any adverse conditions, for instance, through utilizing tools, including but not limiting to the 5 whys, fishbone diagram, etc., is met. This is why we hold to validation. Learning occurs when we do validation, right? We want to learn from our mistakes and thus put measures in place that aim at preventing these unwanted recurrences from happening again. So by validating each countermeasure, we learn what works and what does not work, or what may work and what may not work. When we're considering validation, we're asking, is there any proof? Is there something you can measure or observe? Do you have any concrete evidence, any objective evidence to support the root cause determination? Is there any history or knowledge to indicate that this possible root cause could actually produce such a problem? Is there anything underneath the possible root cause that could be a more probable root cause? That's the digging deeper part. Is there anything that this possible root cause requires in order to produce the problem? And are there any other causes that could possibly produce the same type of problem? Let's get into data collection and analysis. The power of accurate data. Oof. Accurate and relevant data is crucial. It's important for identifying the true root cause or the true root causes. This avoids any misleading assumptions. It helps to provide a clear picture of the problem. It enables informed decision-making. How can anyone make any informed decision if they don't have the information in which to analyze? How does anyone direct an organization if you don't have the information at hand in order for you to steer the ship? So accurate data reduces the risk of addressing the symptoms instead of the root causes. Gathering the right information. So when we're gathering information, we are investigating, we are auditing, and there's different ways that we can do this. If any one of you has ever taken an internal auditor course or just an auditing course, what is it that we tell you, or how can we gather information? We tell you it's through interviews. These are direct conversations that we're having with stakeholders, with interested parties, whether internal or external, whether it's our employees, whether it's our clients, whomever. Observations, this is observing processes and events firsthand. Documentation review, we're analyzing existing records, reports, work instructions, SOPs, forms, anything. It's these three ways: interviews, observation, and documentation review. Analyzing data helps identify patterns and trends relating to the problem. That's why we want the data. We want to look at the data, analyze the data, and then try to determine, are there any trends that we see? So we can do a trend analysis. The trend analysis identifies patterns over time. The Pareto charts prioritizes. So if some of you are in managerial positions and you're like, oh my goodness, where do I put my hands first? It's all important, but what is it that I need to prioritize? You might actually benefit from a Pareto chart. So for those of you who do not know what a Pareto chart is, we're going to look into it. I'll give you just very briefly, we'll touch on it, but this might be your holy grail. So you might want to unpack this a little bit further as well. And then we've got scatter plots. Scatter plots help us examine relationships between variables. So let's look at an example of a Pareto chart. So Pareto charts help identify the most significant factors that contribute to a problem. So some of the key components, let's look at the left y-axis. So if those of you don't remember your grade 7, 8, and 9 math course, your y-axis is your vertical axis. So the left y-axis represents the frequency or the impact, whereas the right y-axis represents the cumulative percentage. So the core concept, the Pareto charts are based on the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, which states that roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. They help prioritize efforts by identifying the most significant factors contributing to a problem. So how do I interpret this? You focus on the bars on the left-hand side of the chart, and these represent the most significant contributors. Use a cumulative percentage line to determine the point at which a small number of categories account for a large percentage of the problem. So we want to identify the vital few factors. This is your prioritization. Identify the vital few factors that, if addressed, would have the greatest impact on solving the problem. In terms of application, identifying the most common causes of defects, prioritize your customer complaints, focus on improvement efforts on the most significant areas. Let's get into scatter plot examples. So the scatter plot reveals potential correlations between variables. So you'll notice that your x-axis, that's your horizontal, your kilometers run per week, for instance, that represents one variable. Your y-axis, your vertical axis, represents the other variable. Your data points, these are each points on the plot that represents a pair of values for the two variables. So, core concept, your scatter plots display the relationship between two quantitative variables, not qualitative, they're numbers based. They help identify potential correlations and patterns. And you'll notice that there's an arrow that is pointing to an outlier. If we consider including an outlier as part of our data point, it will skew the potential average, which is your red line. So whenever you make the concerted effort of saying, I'm going to exclude a certain data point, make sure that you provide justification why, because you will be asked. That's guaranteed. And just saying, well, it's an outlier is not good enough. You need to provide further information for that. So a positive correlation means that one variable increases as the other variable also increases. So we tend to see an upward slope. A negative correlation, which is depicted in the picture on my far right, means that one variable is increasing while the other one is decreasing. And a no correlation means that there's no clear relationship between the variables. And that's typically depicted by a box or a circle, a square rather, or a circle. The strength of the correlation, so something like what we see over here is average to weak. A strong correlation means that the data points, they form a very tight pattern, almost they're all next to, if not on, the red line. And a weaker correlation means that the data points are more scattered, like what they're at here. They can still form the line. You still see the pattern. You still see that correlation where it is a negative slope, but the points are not on that line. They're further spread apart. So you want to be able to look for patterns or trends in the data, such as clusters or outliers. And we spoke a little bit about outliers just now. The application is that it predicts future outcomes based on past data. It identifies the relationships between cause and effect, and it can identify potential areas for improvement. So just to summarize, Pareto charts, scatter plots. Both Pareto charts and scatter plots are powerful tools for data analysis. Are they the only tools? No, they're not the only tools. These are tools, however, these are methods, these are tools that most organizations will lean to. It's what I have seen in organizations. Pareto charts help prioritize efforts while scatter plots reveal relationships. So you need to determine what is it that you're wanting to get out of your data analysis. Are you trying to prioritize your efforts, or are you trying to reveal certain relationships? Understanding how to interpret these charts is essential for making informed decisions. It is important to remember that correlations does not equal causation when reviewing scatter plots. Some tips for success: you want to avoid working in a vacuum. Whenever you are trying to determine potential root causes, involve people in the discussion. Pitch at the correct level of detail. And by the way, what is the correct level of detail? You don't know until you start submersing yourself in it and working with the tools. Prioritize effort. Yes, we want to be able to nip it in the bud, but you know what? If you don't get it right the first time, don't worry about it. What I'm looking for is, did you go back to the drawing board and try to figure something else out? That's part of continuous improvement as well, which is something that ISO 9001 owns in on quite a bit. Verify control measures and tasks. Softwares, they help, but do not get hung up on them. Use the method to its full potential. And if you've outgrown that method, try something else. Keep the end objective in mind. This is going to help you to not derail. And quantification, use the right tool for the job, but you won't know what tool to use unless you're actually utilizing them. And on that note, my dear Cindy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. That was amazing. I hope everyone was able to take in all of that information. Please remember that we will be sending you a link to rewatch this session. I just would like to ask a few questions that have come up from the crowd, if that's okay with you, Sabrina.
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
How do you ensure that a team distinguishes between a true root cause and a contributing factor, especially when both seem plausible and are supported by data?
Okay, so I love this one. Have you ever heard of effectiveness check? So let me just give you a little bit of a peep show that you can expect on the next webinar. Most people, when they're thinking of root cause analysis, what they'll do is that they say, okay, this is a problem, this is the immediate action, this is what we've done, and then this is what we're putting in place. what I like to do, and yes, I am piggybacking off of ISO 9001, and I get it. It's not a webinar that's promoting ISO 9001 or a webinar about quality. I understand that, but I do piggyback off of certain techniques or frameworks that I find work well together. So what I do is I determine what the situation is. I fix it. So I turn something non-conforming into conforming, and then I evaluate that risk and I quantify that risk. And I determine what is that risk? How many times did it happen before? What's the impact to the business? What's the impact to the client? All depending on what the situation is. And I come up with an RPN, a risk priority number. In line with what you're saying, yeah, but how do I know if it's a contributing factor, if it is the situation? Okay, work out your action plan. You're doing it, so you're getting brownie points for that anyway. Your actions are going to be addressed to certain people by a certain given timeline. And remember, we are addressing people. We're not addressing job titles, because more than one individual could have the same job title. And the last thing you want is, oh, I thought you were taking care of it. Oh, I thought you were taking care of it. You don't want that. So who is the one responsible for carrying out that action? By what due date? When everything's said and done, there's a waiting period. That's up to you to determine. Could be 3 months, could be a week. I don't like a week, but sometimes it's warranted. Could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be 9 months, could be a year, could be a year and a half. And there's a waiting period. And then what you do is you reanalyze the risk. And hopefully that number should have gone down. Now, organizations, some companies, what they have done is that they've put some sort of a magical number. They'll say 20%. So you need to see an improvement of at least 20%. So you would have to go back and calculate, well, what is the percentage of that occurring before we put corrective actions in place? And now that we put corrective actions in place, what is the percentage now? And if you've hit the magical number of 20%, hey, I think we got it. So the thing is, you never really know unless you determine what are the tools, what are the guidelines, what are the tools and guidelines that you will utilize in order for you to show the notes, indicate that there is some sort of an improvement. I'm a numbers gal. I work really good with numbers. So what I would do is figure out the percentage earlier, figure out the percentage later. And you know what? Even if you're decreasing, then for me, that's good enough. You might say we want to decrease by a certain number, but now remember, you are imposing an obligation on yourselves. It's okay. But if you don't meet that number, the expectation is that you go back to the drawing board and you try to determine what is another potential root cause and fix that. Determine action plans towards that, and then do the process again. I hope that answered your question. I think it was a long-winded answer, but that works really, really well, and you can expect that on the next on our next webinar, the second part of this one.
All right, this is a comment and question, and it's really great. Time constraints are a barrier I'm running into often with CAPA. How do we overcome this issue in our everyday instead of having a nonconformance happen to inspire the change?
You and everybody else. So one of the things I'm very hung up on is communication. So it's important for me to determine and to create those guidelines, what we call nonconformances and what we call corrective actions. And maybe what I'll do is on my next, and I'll make myself a little mental note. I will put in a PowerPoint on how we determine what are nonconformances, what are corrective actions. Nonconformances are clear, corrective actions are maybe not so much, they have more muddied water. But our job is to determine that as we're starting to see a trend in certain nonconformances appearing, that we now take that and we open up that car and say, let's close off those nonconformances because we're going to address those nonconformances through a car. And this is where we are required to do more of that unpacking, that thinking, that engage in critical thought, engage more people around us, more people that are going to help us determine what's going on. And you know what? What's really important is to be able to call on the right people to that proverbial table and start unpacking. Driving continual improvement is where you are relying on your colleagues, and where you don't just say, okay, once a year we get to management review, we figure out what our improvement projects are going to be, and that's it. No, improvements have to do with, let's look at our day to day. Let's not get hung up on trying to determine necessarily a tool, but let's look at where our issues are. Let's get the right people involved. Let's create the teams, and let's drive change. This is ongoing. This is a battle that everybody fights. How do I determine what's a priority versus what's not a priority? I hope I answered your question. I'm likely going to see it in the questions that come up, because we do compile this. If I can offer more guidance on this, I definitely will, and I'll follow up with an email. But that was an excellent question.
I thought so too. Guys, we're at the top of the hour. We have a ton of questions. We just can't get to them today, but we will get a download of every question, and we will either Sabrina or I will reply to you individually. I just want to bring your attention back to the slides. You can see this is our YouTube channel. Our content is placed on our YouTube channel. There's tons of webinars and other kinds of discussions and presentations. So please grab that QR code and subscribe to that channel. SGS Academy, we offer training for various ISO standards. So you can just see here is our availability for ISO 9001 specific training. We offer requirements, internal auditor, lead auditor, as well as IRCA lead auditor, which qualifies you to move on to the third-party auditing. So we have lots of opportunities. If you're interested in more details about that, just go ahead and indicate in the survey. You are going to have a survey pop up here at the end of the session. Please participate. We really value your input and your feedback. And you can see there's our social media channels, our website, and of course, Sabrina and my email addresses. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Please be sure to register for our next session. Part 2 is on May 16th. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.